All right. Good morning. Thank you very much for joining today. We have just completed our special service for prayers for overcoming illness. And now I would like to do my Dharma talk. And so let's see. I think it's better without the glasses this morning. So, all right. Okay. So good morning. Thank you for joining with me here at the temple in Syracuse and participating online in the joyful recitation of the Lotus Sutra and chanting of Odaimoku. Today we dedicate our prayers and the merit we have obtained to those who suffer from illness, whether short-term or long-term illness. We also offer our merit to those who care for the sick. As you may know, I have written a lot about the subject of illness and caring for those who are ill. I recently published a book, Contemplating Illness, and now that book is even available and translated into Spanish. What I'd like to talk about today is sound, our voice. We use our voice when we recite the sutra and we chant Odaimoku. This is not insignificant also to illness. Chih-i says in the Myosho-ji or the Makashikan, quoting, when people who are choked up with grief or joy or are uplifted when they voice their emotions and cry out in sorrow or sing with laughter. It is the same for one who practices contemplation, end quote. When illness occurs, it is sometimes very therapeutic to voice one's physical condition. People share their concerns, their complaints, their pains, their sufferings, their challenges. And in fact, it's required if we are to accomplish healing, especially when we go to see the doctor. Without our verbal explanation or even a written explanation or even the verbal explanation of a caregiver, we cannot communicate our condition to the person who is to provide our treatment. That is one situation where vocalizing our discomfort is helpful. Other times, such as when we tell someone about our discomfort and the other person in turn engages us in compassionate conversation. Admittedly, though, many people do not know how to listen compassionately. Frequently, the conversation devolves into either a dismissive response or I know how you feel, when in fact, it's impossible to know how someone else feels if you don't listen to them. So please, when someone tells you how they feel, learn to engage them in their condition, not in your interpretation of their condition. Asking questions is helpful, more so than pronouncements or dismissals. Also, as the listener, do not get into a comparison duel of who has the most pain or whose illness is greater. It'd be better not to even be willing to listen. My neighbor has several health complications. I've already established that she has no capacity to hear anything about anyone else's health. And so I don't offer anything about how I'm feeling. Yet I try to remain compassionate towards her condition, asking such questions as how is she coping? Or how is she managing the care of her husband? Or if she is getting the necessary treatment, or even if she's taking her medications. All of those things can be helpful and engage my neighbor in a much deeper conversation. I have to remember that, I have a car, I have transportation. She does not. Anywhere she goes, she has to depend on someone else to get her there. So her situation is indeed perhaps truly worse than mine. So for those who have illness, it is difficult to talk about it because sometimes people are not prepared to listen. Listening is something we all could learn to do better. Further on, chih-i offers this. Singularly chanting a Buddha name is like someone pulling a heavy load who is unable to advance by one's own power. By provisionally engaging the help and assistance of a bystander, the load can be lifted easily, end quote. So when a person is talking about their illness, they are, to some degree, engaging you in the opportunity to lend them support. Support either with encouragement or compassion or sympathy or even support for daily living aid. As a listener, you are not obligated to do anything except be honest with the other person.
Be honest about what you are capable of doing, and even be honest about your inability to listen. You know, Brene Brown once, well, she compares. You know, a lot of us don't really understand what the difference between sympathy and compassion and empathy are, and even the lines between empathy and compassion are rather blurred. And I don't stick to a fixed explanation, but there is a definite distinction between sympathy and empathy and compassion. And she illustrates this point by, imagine, if you will, your friend has fallen into a hole and is now underground in a dark cavern or dark room. There's no lights or anything, just the hole. And sympathy is you stick your head down in the hole and you say, hey, looks kind of dark in there. That sucks. Gosh, I feel bad for you. And then you lift your head up out of the hole and you walk on your way. Compassion and empathy, it means that you slide down that hole yourself and you sit there with them in the dark. And you say, how are you doing? How are things going? What's going through your mind right now? How can I be helpful? What can we do together? These kinds of things. Sympathy is observing someone and not being really connected to their situation. Empathy and compassion connects. So one explanation I heard is, it's freezing outside, it's snowing, and here in Syracuse, that is quite frequently in the wintertime. And someone out there is starving and maybe inadequate clothing, and you're in your nice warm house and you look out the window and say, gosh, that poor fella out there, hungry and inadequately clothed. Empathy and compassion is going out there and being beside that person, and if you can, listen to what they need and provide it, or at least tell them that you're incapable of providing it. So continuing on with my prepared Dharma talk, when a person is talking about their illness, they are to some degree engaging you in the opportunity, oh, I read that already, to lend them support. Okay. Continuing on, the sound or communication in all aspects of life is a uniquely human characteristic of community. There are other species who communicate and manage to accomplish tasks in community, yet none have developed this skill to the degree humans have. At least we think that. Communication is a tool and a skill that allows us as a species to get things done. We build things, destroy things, invent things, create things. We've got an element on Neil's t-shirt, 117 Tennesseum. Hope I pronounced that right. We invented that as humans. We create things, we solve problems, and we communicate as a society. The degree to which we effectively communicate, and the goal to which we apply this skill determines the quality of our lives. Communication is key to overcoming illness. Communication is not just a one-directional activity. Communication includes listening. Continuing with chih-i, quote, the situation is the same for one who practices contemplation. When you are mentally weak and not able to banish the obstacles to contemplation, chanting the name of a Buddha and soliciting his protection keeps evil conditions such as those listed above from destroying your concentration. End quote. When we chant Odaimoku and recite the sutra with our voice, we are engaging in what might be considered a concentrated devotional act. Nyoke and I have spoken about this frequently. We talk about this, that we both feel that chanting is something that requires a deeper level of focus and meditation than merely silent sitting, and certainly greater than merely reading the sutra silently. When we chant the Odaimoku and recite the sutra, we are calling out the name of the Buddha. We are rejoicing in the name and benefit of the Buddha. We are practicing together with the Buddha to effect a change in our lives and thereby in our environment.
Today, we've chanted Odaimoku and recited the sutra with our voices. We have listened to the cares of those who are ill and have taken an action on their behalf to call on the aid of the Buddha. We have listened with compassion and have engaged in the single most effective thing we can do to lend them our support. It is the mission of this temple to be a refuge to those who suffer from illness through teaching, listening, and praying. I appreciate you joining together today to pray for those who are suffering from illness. And that's the end of my prepared Dharma talk. So thank you very much. I know that we have about 3 minutes until Bill needs to leave. So 3 or 4 minutes till Bill needs to leave. So we'll offer Bill first up thoughts, comments, impressions, disgruntlements. Bill.
Drawing blanks. I know I'm drawing a blank.
Oh.
I know I'll come up with one, but I was,
blanks are okay.
Yeah. I might have to go second.
Okay. Okay. Well, because there are 2 of you in Maxwell Square, let's go to Neil and then go back to Bill. Again, I'm thinking about when Bill needs to leave to go to work. Neil, comments, thoughts?
You know, that's, for me, it was always very unnatural to chant and use my voice in the beginning. So, you know, but, you know, I was nonverbal as a kid until I was about 3. So it's a learned skill, but it's a valuable one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's been a part of my journey is actually vocalizing more of the chanting process.
Yeah, it's a complicated thing, you know, especially with illness. People sometimes feel that other people aren't interested, or that they've shared too much of their illness, and so they don't want to burden people. It's a real challenge how much to communicate. There's no easy answer to that. You know, we just have to find out what our capacity as listeners is, and be honest. You know, if we have a great capacity, then make sure that we communicate that. If we have a limited capacity, then make sure that we also communicate that compassionately, even so far as saying, "I appreciate what you're saying, and you know, I need to think about what you've told me so far." That's a good way to get out of, at least put a pause on the information that's being given to you. It's a polite way, a compassionate way of saying, I need space. You as the listener need space. Sometimes the person who's sick needs space. Maybe they don't want to share anything with you, and that's okay. That's part of learning to listen and say, okay, when you're ready, if you're ready, then I'm willing to listen. So there are all kinds of ways of navigating this complicated situation that has grown, I think, increasingly more complicated as we've lost or diminished our ability to listen and to engage compassionately and not dismissively. All right, Bill, come back to you. Back to you.
I don't know if it's when Neil mentioned about the chanting, where I find some level sometimes of frustration with it is like if allergies come up. There are times that I'm just thinking, to heck with this if I'm doing it, particularly at home alone during home services.
So you're saying that when allergies interfere or impact your ability to vocalize, you get discouraged?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's
and you heard me today, right?
And that's what made me thought about between Neil and when you said that yourself, it was exactly it, and it just the feeling that comes over basically is one of frustration, and why am I doing this? And sometimes I will quit and do it silently, but that's not vocalizing.
Well, you know, in my official capacity, in my official capacity, I have to keep going. And, you know, in my personal capacity, I keep going anyway. You know, it's part of who I am. You know, I'm not perfect. It's part of what I live with my, you know, health. And that's me. And so, you know, I'm unvarnished, unvarnished in front of the Buddha.
Okay, that is one way of looking at it.
You know, it's the sheet music just blew off your stand,
Exactly.
and the show must go on.
There you go.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Well, Bill, I know you have to leave in about 3 minutes.
Right.
So let us just pause here and chant Odaimoku together 3 times, and then we'll come back to Maxwell and Anna and Neil if he has any follow-up stuff. So Bill, thanks for joining us today. Happy Labor Day, and I wish you all the best. So we'll go ahead and chant Odaimoku together. And leave your microphones on. We're going to just do a sound cloud, and that'll be on the recording too. So ready? Namu myo renge kyo. Namu myo renge kyo. Namu myo renge kyo. Alrighty, Bill, when you need to leave, you just silently close the door behind you.
Okay, we'll do.
Alrighty, Maxwell, Anna, comments, thoughts, observations, complaints, satisfactions.
No, that was great. Thank you so much. That was a
What
really
was great about it?
Well, let me tell you, I felt it was very relatable. I know both Anna and I have been talking recently about a lot of the topics that you brought up, like not being a better listener, not dismissing people. And, you know, really you can never know you can never, like, even though it's like kind of nice to think like, I know what you're going through, like that kind of sounds like a nice thing to say, but in the end, like you don't really know what it's like to be them. And then a second thing that I really appreciated was the emphasis on communication not being like a one-way thing. And I think that that's true. And I think that me personally, I really need to get better at doing the listening part. It's something I want to work on. And I've related it back to your Lotus Sutra practice, the 35-day that I did. And I tried to focus on like right speech. And I feel like that ties into this as well. Like, how can we communicate better? And that includes listening. So, yeah, I just really appreciated a lot of the points.
Okay, good. Anna?
Kind of what Max said, you know, a lot of the
No. You have to have your own original thoughts.
Why? Why would I need that?
Because you're an original, unique individual.
Thank you.
It's true.
No, I know. I was just going to say that, like, you know, like Max had said, we've been discussing a lot of these points recently with certain people that we've had in our lives that we felt like it was, you know, kind of one-way communication. Something that you brought up was, you know, that we can always improve our listening skills. And, you know, for a lot of my life, I always felt like I was a good listener. You know, I was very empathetic, and, you know, like my thoughts would kind of turn off, and I'm like, okay, I'm very attentive. I'm fully listening to you. But as I've gotten older and as I've changed as a person, I realized that my ego can get in the way of listening. So, like, when somebody's talking in my head, I might finish their sentence if they like take a pause, or in the middle of talking, whether it's like a lecture or just any sort of communication, my mind might start to wander off. And then when I bring myself back, I'm realizing that I am so concerned with myself and my own thoughts that I'm not being fully present with the other person, you know, and that's not fair to them. And there's a lot that I can work on to be a better listener. And in order to do that, I need to tackle my own ego to really, you know, be present with the other person.
Yeah. Have you ever, when you find or have found yourself disconnecting, have you ever found it useful to perhaps ask a clarifying question? You know, when you disconnect from somebody, you've lost their train of thought in a way, and you have encountered a road bump, if you will, or a speed bump in the road, in your road of listening. And sometimes to help get back on that path or to overcome that speed bump, my analogies are not working very well today, but hopefully you'll get the idea. Have you ever found it helpful to ask a clarifying question or to ask an engaging question?
I do that, but it's usually when I'm already actively engaged.
Okay, pause here. He said, I do that, but. So I do that and. You do that and you also do something else.
Yes.
Okay,
So
the but negates what you were going to say. All right, continue, carry on. I do that and.
I do that, and it only occurs when I'm already actively engaged in listening, though I do not do it as when I'm disengaged, if that makes sense. It's like I'm still listening even when I'm disengaged, but I'm not listening with like my full body, with my full attention.
Right, yeah. And for your benefit, is there a question that you could ask the other person that would help you reconnect with them?
Sometimes I find myself saying, can you repeat that? Even if I've heard it already, then I completely, center myself and bring myself to attention.
Okay, all right. And does that help you?
It does, yes.
All right. Okay, so that's a good skill to carry on with, I would think, wouldn't you?
Yes.
All right, wonderful. Let's celebrate that. Yes.
Yes.
All right. Okay. Yeah, listening is not just being quiet. And it's, you can listen and pay attention and be fully engaged. And yet there's an aspect of listening that asks questions, that invites a deeper connection. And yeah, sure, they're your questions and they're your curiosity. And so in a way, it could be considered manipulating the conversation in a direct way that you want to go. And that's not always so bad. Sometimes it can help the other person focus. Sometimes it can help the other person open up and share things with you that they're incapable of sharing on their own, that you create space for them to say things that maybe they're not sure they could say otherwise. Such as, now asking for someone's personal pronouns serves a couple of purposes that I can see. One, it lets the other person know that I'm willing to listen and consider something that may not be a binary answer. It also allows the other person to identify themselves in a way that is respectful and caring in a safe place. So sometimes we can ask these questions. How is your illness impacting your ability to take care of your household? It's probably something that they're thinking about, but they're not sure that they could share it with you. And maybe you can ask a question that you might be able to assist with. How is your illness affecting your ability to go grocery shopping? I know my neighbor likes the Jiffy corn mix, the blue box. We both like the same thing. It's the best corn mix there is. And so, I'll ask her, I said, you need me to pick up some the Jiffy corn mix. And I can do that. I can't take her to her doctor. I can't, run and get her prescriptions. But I can ask if she needs anything picked up while I'm at the grocery store. So my limits, I am honoring my limits. I'm being honest. So sometimes we can ask these kinds of questions with a thought of what could I contribute? So maybe I could come over and haul their garbage out on garbage collection day. Who knows what, we each have our different capabilities. Maybe all we can do is listen. So, communication is also, listening is also engaged questioning as well. It's complicated, yes? Anybody have any? We've got 8 minutes left for our normal quit time. And I'll devote the final 8 minutes to your final thoughts. Who wants to go first? All right, we've got a couple hands. All right. Yes, Anna.
So your earlier point about how a disease might impact an individual's capacity to live their life. One of the first questions that came to my mind was, what if the person is in denial of their disease? How do you, you can see that it's impacting their life, but they're saying, oh, there's no disease. Oh, how, as a social worker, we've learned techniques to help people to come to their own realizations. That you can't just straight up tell them, this is what's happening. You have to get them to realize that themselves. But from your perspective, what if you have a person that is in denial of their disease and you can see it impacting them, and you obviously want to help them, but you can't force what you want onto them.
Right. So, one situation that came immediately to my mind was addictions. And I'm convinced that most people don't really give a damn about the health effects of drugs or alcohol. Most people. That's an ancillary concern. What most people are concerned about is the behavior of the other person as they live through their addiction. And, if we could just be honest about that and say, when you're acting like an asshole or when you're stealing from me, I don't want you around me. And, because again, the fact that somebody's, destroying their liver is really inconsequential to most people. And so addressing the behaviors sometimes can be more helpful to getting to an honest answer and an honest assessment of how we will move forward to resolve that problem and then potentially other problems. I don't believe in this, what do they call it in Alcoholics Anonymous, when the family gangs up on a person and all that
intervention.
Stuff? Yeah, whatever they call it. It's got a real nice sounding name, but it's evil. I'm not really convinced that it really addresses the complicated problem of how is the social situation, the family, the work environment, or whatever, contributing to the complicated issue of addictions. It's very complicated. So that's just one situation where someone may not want to admit to their problem. In the hospital, I see lots of instances where, people have diabetes. They're in denial about the diabetes, and so they don't do anything about affecting a treatment plan or listening to a treatment plan. While they're in the hospital, they're sort of forced into compliance. When they're out of the hospital, oh, it's not really infecting me. Smokers,
long-term health impact of smoking, and yet even not in denial, even with a full awareness that it's making them worse, they continue to smoke. And that's particularly bad when someone's on oxygen. It's not infrequent that in the hospital we see people who have either lit a candle or lit a cigarette while they're on oxygen and burn their face seriously. It's not laughable. But, we as humans are complicated beings. We continually do things that are not in our best interest. Even the most saintly of us engage in behaviors that are not our best interest. And this is a form of denial, is it not? Hello, Anna?
Yeah, no, that was really deep, and I was just absorbing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't have an easy answer for it, except for an awareness of trying to get to what is it that really bugs me. When if a person's not willing to talk about their issue, that's fine. It's none of my business if they don't want to share it. If, however, their illness is impacting me in some way, then how can I get down deep into what it is that's affecting me? Am I really concerned about their liver or kidney? Or am I really concerned about them stealing from me? And learn to be honest with the other person. That to me is the most respectful thing. That's willing to engage them in something, in a way to, how can we stop your thieving, or whatever it is that's bothering you. It's sort of like, when there's the guy holding up the cardboard sign at the freeway exit, and the people you hear who have said, well, I never give those people any money because they're just going to go out and buy alcohol or drugs or whatever it is. It's better to be honest and say, I'm just not going to give to those people. They don't need your moralizing. And I'll tell you what, I personally think that standing out there holding a cardboard sign, panhandling, is it's hard work. Harder work than most people would be willing to engage in. Harder work than any CEO who makes billions of dollars does, for sure. So what the hell if they do go buy alcohol? Just don't give to them if that's your problem. Anyway, enough of that. I kind of got sidetracked there. All right. Anybody else?
Just quickly want to observe, I think a lot of our communications and sometimes these situations is really meant to be just a Band-Aid to make the other person go away. But sometimes what I think breaks that for a lot of people is when you're confronted with something that's so immediate, like someone in your immediate family, it's not just going to go away. I think that's what wakes a lot of people up from that pattern of behavior. And, I see elements of that myself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, unless anybody has any rebuttal to that, I've certainly spoken more than enough. Any follow-up? No, I see shaking your head. And Maxwell, I can't see anything from you. It's a little blurry. And okay, thumbs up. All right. Well, let us officially end our service today. I want to thank you all very much for participating today, for being engaged in this conversation. One of the things I always try to do is get everyone to say something for our service, and I appreciate your willingness to do that. Anna, you didn't know the rules, and so I thank you for participating without knowing. And hopefully you enjoyed our practice today. It's a Nichiren Shu practice, and stay tuned. And there'll be other opportunities where it'll be much more free-flowing as far as question and answers go. So I welcome your questions. And again, thank you. And thank you for those who are watching the recording. Thank you for your time and your interest. And with that, let us now
chant Odaimoku and end our meeting together. Namu Myo Renge Kyo. Namu Myo Renge Kyo. Namu Myo Renge Kyo. Thank you very much. And the text, without all of my little side editions, will be on the blog for those who are interested in reading it at some point later. And the video will be up hopefully sometime today. All right, I'm going to end the recording.